Hey, what's up, folks? Hope all y'all are doing well. Thank you for tuning back into the channel. I really appreciate it. I got another spring tip video for you today. It's a little bit different take on the stick bait. And in the springtime, that's something a lot of people rely on, especially just to generate bites, is a stick bait. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. First of all, I want to thank everyone that has subscribed to the channel. Thank you for all the comments and feedback. It's been really cool because the last couple of weeks, I've actually had some subscribers reach out and tell me some of the, I guess you could say, some of the little success stories they've had, just based on some of the things that I have mentioned in a few of the videos. I'm not going to mention their names or anything like that, but I did have a couple of different instances where that occurred in the last couple of weeks. One in particular was someone that has been fishing, the river, one of the rivers around here, pretty regular for a while, and he's had some good success on it. But this year he made it a goal to become better with crankbaits. And he recently reached out to me because he had a really good day on one of the local rivers. And probably it may have been the best day he said he'd ever had crankbait fishing. And he had reached out to me in the comments and we chatted back and forth. But he was able to find him some fish, and he had probably the best day of crankbait fishing he'd ever had. And he sent me several pictures, and he caught some good ones. So that's the main reason why I wanted to do this channel. Everyone that fishes has got their own little take, their own little style, their own little way of doing things. Very seldom do two people do anything the exact same way. And that's with all the different kinds of baits and across all of fishing, bass fishing, whether it's jigs or plastics or crankbaits or spinner baits or the, all the new stuff that's out there now with glide baits. And if you put a rod and reel in 5 people's hands with the same bait on it, chances are all 5 of them are going to do something a little different. From the retrieve to how fast they work the bait, how slow they work the bait. So although a lot of us talk about a lot of the same techniques and a lot of the same baits, it's often the little things that we each do different that give us the confidence that we get when we go fishing on what we like to throw and what works for us. That's why some things work for some folks and don't work at all for others. It's all about confidence and all about you getting into your groove, getting a feel for the way you like to fish, and then rolling with it. And that's kind of what today's topic is about. I'm not going to say that, and see, I've never really talked to a lot of people that do this in particular. And I'm not saying I invented this or this is some new kind of technique. This is just something I started doing years ago when I used to fish BFLs as a co-angler. And I'm going to give you a little bit background behind the story and what made me think of it. And again, I'm not saying it's rocket science. It's just something that clicked in my head. I started doing it and it worked for me. It was at Lake Gaston. It was a BFL. And this was a good while ago because they haven't had BFLs at Gaston in a while just because of the ramp situation there. But it was in the spring. I was paired up with a guy who was catching a lot of them on a wacky rig. They're running boat docks. They had started to spawn, and everybody knows at Gaston, around those docks, those dock posts, especially the 4-corner dock posts, the 2 in the furthest in the back and the 2 towards the front have always been, to me, where I would get the most majority of my bites. Even now today. I fished the middle post too, but those front and back dock posts have always been the best. And the ladders. It's weird about the whole deal with the ladders on the boat docks. But anyway, we were both getting bites, but we were missing fish. And he started to, and we all do this, as we went along, he was getting anxious because the day was going by and he had lost a couple and we had both missed a few. And as a co-angler, a lot of times you just kind of take what the boater leaves you. I was never one of them that tried to fish overly aggressive and and get in his way or cast towards the water, I knew he was fishing. You'd kind of take the scraps that's left behind. Anyway, I just started thinking, and I took a stick bait. First, let me show you a couple of, these are 3 colors I love in the spring, because in the spring, when the color's changing, the water's warming up, the bluegill get all their colors in them, so do the perch and everything. Everything starts to pop. All the colors start to get real vibrant, I guess is a good word. So I like to use stick baits with a lot of flake. In the spring, probably more than any other time. I use the Bass Pro Shop Sticko or the Strike King Ocho. They're the 2 stick baits I use the most, because over the years, they've held up. And the Sticko is loaded with salt, and it's got a lot of that shimmy. I know everyone says the Senko, the original, you know, and I use those for a while too. I don't feel like the Senko is the same bait it used to be. I like this shimmy that I get from the Bass Pro Shop Sticko. This is just called bluegill, and you can see all the flake in it. Lots of different colors, blue, green, a little bit of purple in there. A little light on one side, dark on the other. This is called Watermelon Magic. Another one. It's got a lot of flake, gold, silver flake. And the last one I really like, and this is called Sprayed Grass. It's a green with blue flake on one side, and then it turns and it's got purple flake on the other. These 3 colors are really good in the early spring, or when about the time the spawn is going on, because of all the color changes in the bluegill and the bait and the other things that, you know, that the bass feed on, especially also when they're protecting their fry or protecting their nest. Everyone throws a wacky rig. Everyone knows you hook in the center. This is a 4-inch Sticko, and this is a 5.5. That day, as I watched the day progress as it went on, I saw what was happening, and those bass were coming from underneath the dock, off those dock posts. But once you pulled that boat away from the bait away from that dock, you would literally see them swim back down. They wouldn't eat the bait. They wouldn't commit to coming out, and you could catch them, but you had to slow way down. And the boater I was paired with that day, I could tell he was not used to fishing slowing down and trying to catch them that way. So I just got to thinking, now, this is, like I said, this has been many, many years ago. I used to take, this is what I used to use for Neko weights back then. And I still keep some with me, just because in case I ever run out of the good stuff that they use nowadays. I would take a couple of packs of these, and I kept them with me all the time. And that was just a regular old wood screw that I could screw into the end of the, so if you don't want to spend the money even today on Neko weights, go to Lowe's, Walmart, anywhere, buy you a couple of packs of these. They cost next to nothing. Keep them with you, and it's the threaded screw. It'll screw right into the end of the bait. What I'm about to show you, this is what I came up with that day. I was using a screw, but now, because of all the, you know, this is probably my favorite size to use. This is a 3/32. This is a Woo Tungsten nail weight. I like the Woo Tungsten the best, and I'm going to tell you why. Everyone makes them. First, the fact that they're tungsten, they're going to be smaller. I like the spiked, the edges on these, because they stay in the bait so much better. Costs a little bit more. You guys know I don't always go for the most expensive and what everyone says is the best. If I'm having good success with something else. But I will say that these, for me, have worked the best. That day, what I did, and I'm going to show you on one of the bigger baits, is I rigged it up Texas rig style, and I just got a little 3/0 hook here just to show you I'm not, I probably on this one, I'd probably use a 4/0, but just for the sake of this, I'm just showing you, just rigging it up Texas. That way you can kind of get an idea of what I'm saying here. Okay. All right. All right. Texas rig. And I took the nail weight or screw back then and I inserted it into the end of my stick bait. Because as I was watching the day go along and I was watching this, I was like, what can I do? I said, it's obvious they're interested in these stick baits, but they do not want to come so far away from that we were just missing a lot of baits. And I inserted a screw into the end of that stick bait. And this is what happened. Again, I'm not saying that this is something that, I'm sure people have always done this. I had never done it. And since that day, a lot in the spring and other times of the year too, depending on how the fish are acting and what the bite is, I will do this. But I inserted that, at that time, screw, but now I'm using the nail weight into the tail of this. And what you got, now the bigger, we were using 5-inch stick baits that day. This is about a 5.5. What you want to do is what you're getting is when you stick that nail weight in the end, is when you pull this, if you've ever done this, you'll know what I'm saying. If you haven't, you're probably gonna be a little bit surprised at what happens. When you pull this away from the cover and then you stop it, this nail weight pulls it almost directly right back down. What I was thinking was, what can I do to keep it underneath that dock? Because he's starting to fish faster. I put that nail weight in there, a screw in there, and as I would pull it away from the dock post and quickly let it go and quickly lower my rod tip back, it would sink right back into that fish's face. I started calling this my backup rig, because when you stop pulling it forward, the nail weight just backs the bait right back up into the fish's face. I ended up fishing my boater that day. When I started doing that, I started getting more bites. Everyone's throwing wacky rigs. Everyone's throwing Neko rigs in the spring. A lot of people throw a Texas rig. I even just recently watched the Bassmasters on the St. John's and the Bass Pro Tour. A lot of the pros fish these Texas rigs. I don't know why no one puts a weight in the tail, because what that does is, if you, especially when they're garden fry, if you've got a fish and he's coming after this and he just stops and you stop this bait, it pretty much falls right back into his face. You know what that does? That aggravates the snot out of him. I've seen it. I bed fished with this where I put as heavy a weight as I can in the tail, and you can just leave this thing in the bed and just, because all the weight is right here in the tail. And you can just, it's just a really different and good way to fish a stick bait in the spring when everybody else is throwing a wacky rig, everybody else is throwing a Neko rig, and everybody else is throwing a Texas rig. I've always just called it the backup rig, because the bait just backs right back up when you raise and lower your rod tip. It works around docks. It works when you're fishing stick baits around brush and laydowns and anywhere you see fish that are bedding, it works. You just need to remember to adjust your weight size to the size stick bait that you're using. You might be able to get away with a smaller one on the 4-inch, but at least for me, on the 5-6-inch stick baits, I go with the 3/32 on when I rig this up. And yes, the Ocho works well with it. It's just something you can do different in the spring. Again, I try to always think of something too that you guys that like to pond fish, kayak fish. Keep one rigged up with a wacky rig and one rigged up this way, and see what the difference in the bites are that day. Some days that wacky rig is, you can't beat it. Some days this will catch them when they don't want to eat that wacky rig, when they're seeing it all the time. This will work. Now, one other bait, a couple other baits actually, that I'll do this with, that I'll put these nail weights in the end. This is one over the last several years I've really gotten a lot of confidence in. This is the Zoom Magnum Finesse Worm. Kind of has a stick bait look to it, kind of, but it's got kind of a, you know, little bulbous or fat tail on it. And I'll do the same thing with this. This is just black. And this is a real color I really like in this is California 420. It's a little, I don't know, it's kind of watermelon, kind of green pumpkin, but it's got black and red in it. Anyway, they eat it. I'll do the same thing with these. And one other bait, this is the Zoom Centipede. I'll put a tiny nail weight in the end of this, no weight on the front, and throw this around. Again, some of this stuff is just when it's tough and you're trying to get bite. Some of this stuff is if you're a guy that just loves to fish, you ain't no tournament guy, you just love to go out there and catch bass, catch whatever you can catch, go out there with your buddies, go out there with your kids. This is the Fish Doctor. I'm not even sure if Zoom still makes that, but it was called the Fish Doctor worm. It's round all the way around, got one flat side. And always rig this whenever you can, this stuff, rig it with the flat side down. That helps the fall. But that's the Fish Doctor, that's just the Centipede. And this was the, and I'm sure they still make this, the Zoom Double Ringer, I think it was called. Completely round, so there's no flat side on this. But guys, this is something that'll catch you. And this is, I have used this past the spawn into the post spawn. If it's slow and I can't get nothing going, I'll still every now and then, I'll just put a 5 or 6 inch stick bait on, stick a nail weight in the end of it. Because when you're pulling this thing through cover, thick cover, or through a tree or through a lay down, a brush, and you stop and let it go back down, if there's a fish down in that tree and he sees this thing and he sees it falling back, they do not like stuff falling back in their face. When it's fleeing, trying to get away, and they're after it, and then you stop it and they stop, and the first thing it does, it starts to sink back towards them. A lot of times that'll get a reaction strike that you may not have gotten if you continued just fishing it wacky style or regular Texas rig. So I've always just called it the backup rig. That's what I call it. I'm sure other people do it. Other people got a different name for it. I ain't trying to take credit for something that, like, I invented some kind of new rig that no one knows about. This is just something I've done. So I hope I hope it helps y'all catch some more fish. You can use any kind of nail weight you want. I got 30 seconds, I got 16ths, I got the 3/30 seconds. Or if you're fishing on a budget and you just, the trusty wood screw or metal screw. And these will screw right into the end of stuff really, really easy. I'm gonna take one of these. This is the Zoom Magnum Finesse Worm. And it takes a little bit of work with the screw, I ain't gonna lie. But once you get it started and get it going, you can get it in there. And the threads of the screw help you to, and you just keep pushing it down until you screw it all the way down to the head. And yeah, it'll go all the way down in. And it's cheaper than buying the Ned weight. So keep this in mind. Hope it helped you catch some fish. It'll definitely help you if you love to fish Senkos, stick baits, weight to tail, catch some bass. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm hoping I'll be able to get back on the water soon. It's been really, really busy. But my hope is that by the end of this week, I might finally knock the rust off. Tournament start up in about 4 or 5 weeks. So thank you all for watching. I appreciate it, and I'll see you guys on the next one.